and welcome. I am the Sterling, and today we'll be playing Going Medieval. In the last episode, we began digging out this massive section of the mountain, and though I pushed hard to get it done, unfortunately I failed. But in the process, I came to learn, with the 3 new settlers and the angle of the shade, no longer do these farms cut it. And so we're going to need to rectify this. So sit back, grab a cold one, and let's get started. Right, so in the last episode, we began digging out the new section of Ironhold. As I've mentioned in the past, this is where we're going to have the palace and a barracks. It's going to be the new fancy area where the old area of Ironhold will be more the industrial district. But we did get a big chunk of it done nonetheless, so I was actually quite happy about that. I would love to get stuck into digging this out and finish it all up. But unfortunately though, this is actually going to need to go on the back burner as I have more pressing matters. We need to re-engineer the farming area because as I showed you in the last episode, with the shade, we're just not getting the yields we need off the fields. And even though we're getting enough food to feed the 22 settlers we had, it's untested whether or not I can actually feed 25 settlers on these fields. But the real issue comes down to the fact that we burn up all our seeds on these fields. I don't know the ratio or the exact number of fields that are actually functioning at this very moment and what fields are blocked by the shade. But by the results, I do know that there are more fields inactive than there are being used because we're using up all the seeds. Now, this wouldn't happen if we're going tat for tat. And I have been buying loads of seeds, enough that it shouldn't be an issue. So I wouldn't be surprised if most of these fields don't bloody work. So what's the plan? As I said in the last episode, the plan is basically just to raise the fields up to about this level here. That way, even though this mountain and Ironhold itself is still going to cast a shadow over our fields, hopefully the sun that we actually do get is significantly more than what we're getting at the moment, which, let's be honest, doesn't have to be that much more because at the moment we get bugger all. So anything on top of bugger all is a benefit. Now to do this, one of the main things I'm going to want to do is knock out these walls of terrain. But unfortunately, these are load-bearing walls. If I knock them out, the ground above is going to collapse. So the big question is, how am I actually going to go about doing this without having a cave-in? It's actually going to be quite straightforward. I'm going to use the structures that I've already got that have a stability of 4, such as these pillars or any other buildings or structures that have a stability of 4, and I'm actually going to put a temporary support on top of them. Something like this, just a couple of wooden beams like so. Then on top of those wooden beams, I'll just put some temporary walls, do the same thing next door, couple more temporary walls, and our wooden beam in between. And now that section there will be supported and we'll be able to take out this wall. Then I'll be able to get in, put the beams back in where I want them, knock out the rest of the wall I don't, and then once we're done, I can remove these temporary structures. Not an issue. The hardest part of this will actually be getting up to build it, but that's not the end of the world. I'm sure I'll find a way. No doubt it'll probably just involve ladders either side, something simple like that, and that way we can also get in to knock these walls out. Another thing I need to think about is while I'm doing all this, even though the fields are rubbish, they're still producing food and fodder that is a necessity to our settlement. And so I can't afford to have any given time that we're still not producing. So I'm going to have to do a real balancing act of making sure fields are running while I'm doing all this, right up until the very moment that I can actually start producing on the new field, and then I can start taking away fields underneath. But this does mean I can't block these fields with terrain above until such time as I actually am ready to start planting. As I said, it's a balancing act. It's not going to be the easiest task, but let's be honest, it's not going to be the hardest task either. Well, now all I have to do is go through, put in the rest of the support pillars, work out a way of getting up there and actually building them, start digging out all these walls, and start putting in the new farmland. So there's nothing left for me to do but hit play and let them get to work. Day 2 of spring 1375. And that there is the first section of this project complete. But you're probably looking at it going, but Sterling, you allowed the roof to cave in. Now there's this big gaping hole in the roof. And I'd say, yes, you're very observant, but don't panic, as allowing the roof to cave in was deliberate. As you see, the new farmland will no longer consist of just 2 long strips of farmland. Due to the sun and the way the shade works, I want to utilise as much space as possible, especially having the 2 mountains either side, and so I've decided to actually make the new farmland area this big. That way I can actually try and centre the farmland in the middle of this area, keeping the farmland away from the outer walls, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we don't get the problem with the shade anymore. So then what's next for this build? Well, we have to start laying the soil that we're actually going to plant on top of, which will go on top of all these pillars and on top of all these archways. The way we're actually going to access this farmland is via 6 stairwells. There'll be 1 in every corner and then 2 in the middle, making up 6 for easy access to the farmland. Now these stairwells are going to be nothing special. They're actually going to be more like towers than they will be like stairwells. And the reason why I'm doing them like this is that way, if the enemy, the cheeky buggers, decide to actually make ladders down into the farmland to access Ironhold, at least these stairwells will be able to be used as some form of defensive structure, hopefully keeping the enemy out long enough for us to actually get into position and be able to defend Ironhold. But hopefully it doesn't come to this. So essentially, the stairwells will look very similar to a tower. There will just be a door here, and it'll be wrapped with walls as so. Add flooring, and then we can just go and start adding the stairs themselves. Then the rest is very much the same. Floor, walls, rinse, and repeat. Just like so. And as I said, nothing special. Now I just have to go and replicate it 5 more times. Just like so. Now you may have noticed that on these stairwells, there's doors on the different levels, such as this one here, down here, you got one up here, another one down here, and this is because other than space, one of the other things that we're actually running out of here at Ironhold is storage. And this is evident by the fact that there is so much limestone and dirt still just laying around. It's because every single place that we can actually store anything at the moment is full. It's all chock-a-block. And I did contemplate maybe modding the game and changing the actual stack size from 200 to 2000 or something ridiculous like that. After thinking about it, I came to realise, no, that's too cheesy. This is a better option, and that is more storage. So underneath the farmland, there'll be 3 levels of storage, and hopefully that will tie us over for 5 minutes. And I say 5 minutes because that's about all we're going to get. And then I'll really need to start thinking about another place to be storing all this dirt and limestone, because I just can't get rid of enough of it with the merchants. Later on, I'll be able to unlock the cartography table, and then I'll be able to actually go out into the region and not just fight other settlements when that becomes a thing, but I'll also be able to trade large amounts of resources, and hopefully we can get some of this that we don't need down. Nonetheless, moving on, the next thing we need to do is actually go through and layer all of this with soil. Ta-da! Now that should take up a nice big chunk of our soil, hopefully giving us back a little bit of storage space. Now there's nothing left to do but hit play and let them get to work. Day 6 of summer, 1375. And there's the farmland complete. And my word, I forgot how easy it is to actually grow and feed a settlement when we're actually getting sunlight. This is just well and truly taking off. Now all that's left is for me to continue going out into the world collecting seeds and saplings and also buying them from the merchant. Though the red currants and the herbs here, they're going to be slow going as there's not many around. Though it looks like these are ready to be harvested again. Fantastic. If they're ready, then maybe the bunch over here is as well. Yes, it is. I swear there was another one here somewhere. Oh well, I'll find it in my own time. Now to actually accomplish building this, it got a bit hairy at one point. Our food supply dropped rapidly. As for fodder, it wasn't the end of the world, as the map is well and truly littered with it. But food gets a bit scarce, so once again, I had to really start hunting. And as you can see, I hunted nearly the entire wildlife. This has actually bounced back a little bit. Wasn't too long ago, I was only down to a few wild animals. Good news is I didn't actually have to cull too many of our own animals. I only killed a few cows here and there, but the rest of the food supply was just based around whatever it was that was dying at the time. And so anything that died of old age we're eating, as per usual. I just sort of had to buffer this. But as I said, all that's left here at the farmland is to actually start repopulating all our seeds. Though there is something else I want to do up here. As we've got our bees under shelter on the sides, but there's one more thing that we need to do outside. And though it's seasonal, I think it's something that we finally should actually start doing. But first we have to unlock it. So we must first go up to the research tab and come across to ice making. Now, as the name suggests, it'll give us the ability to actually make ice blocks using the ice box. It'll cost 20 chronicles and 10 textbooks to unlock. Let's unlock that now. Done. Now, I'm thinking I'm just going to litter either end of the actual fields with these ice boxes. So we'll just put one here, and then a couple on the other side, and then one in the middle, and then we'll just go and do the same thing down the back here. And then once they're built, come winter time, the settlers will fill them full of water, and then the cold weather themselves will create ice blocks for us to use in the warmer months down in our food cellars. But now I'm comfortable in calling our farmland complete. And hopefully I don't have to expand it any further because that looks like it's going to give us one hell of a yield. So the next thing I want to do this episode, I want to start planning out this storage area that I was discussing earlier on in the episode. Now look, it's not going to be anything fancy. It's going to be really straightforward. Essentially, it's just going to look very similar to what we have over here. I've come to realize if this is going to be the industrial area and this is the fancy fang-dangled town, above is the farm plateau, this neck of the woods must be just for storage. And there we go. That's the storage planned out. And as you can see, it's somewhat of a defensive structure. So if we ever need to, we can actually use this to defend Ironhold. Now all that's left is for us to actually build this. Unfortunately though, that will have to wait for another episode as this is all the time we have for today. So thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.